So everybody please welcome Duncan Kirkwood.
Well, good morning, y'all. My name is Duncan Kirkwood. I live here in Buffalo. I do consulting for about 3 or 4 different companies around advocacy, organizing, training, outreach, community engagement. Grew up here in Central Park, so not too far from here. It's like the hood of Buffalo, right? Central Park. And it was real violent, rough neighborhood. I was fortunate to go to performing arts high school. And my mother was like, you gotta get out of here. Cause like at that time, we had like Crips, Bloods, Folk, Vice Lord, we had everything. So my mom was like, you gotta get out of here cause you're not gonna make it to 25. So when it was time to go to college, I went down south. I went to a historically black college in Montgomery, Alabama, Alabama State University. I got involved with a couple justice initiatives. That's where I first started to find my voice and learn that I had, power and I had a purpose. And so then fast forward, when I was working my first job, I was working for a city council member down in Montgomery, and I learned that the education system is broken, which is no surprise, right? But it's broken on purpose, right? Once I learned that it's actually policy written into law that intentionally does things that is not for the benefit, actually to the detriment of students, I got like really angry. We all have this thing that when you see something is wrong, it just do something to you. Right? And then you got to make that decision. Is it done enough to you to force you to act or not? Right? And so with education, it kind of pulled me into action. And then the more I got pulled in, the deeper I got. And so now when something is wrong, it's just like, we got to fix that. Right? Because then you start to see the effect it has on children. Somebody has to be a voice for the students. Somebody has to be a voice for the parents, because parents feel hopeless and powerless. So first thing it takes to change policy is have an understanding that if something is wrong, okay, you don't have to accept it. That is step one. You have to understand that something that is wrong and it needs to be fixed. Nothing about the subpar education that our children are receiving is normal. The over-disciplining of colored children, none of that is normal, right? We have just become so, conditioned to accept it, or apathetic, whatever you want to call it, but it ain't normal. So that's the first thing. You want to change policy, you got to say, okay, this is what's happening. It ain't right, so we got to fix it. So the next thing is you got to look up the policy. Who is responsible? Because when we talk about policy, that can come from different levels, right? So New York State has education laws, right? So to change the New York State education laws, you got to call Crystal Peoples-Stokes and Senator Kennedy. It has to be the state lawmakers have to fix that policy. If you have a Buffalo Public Schools policy, or BPS policy, that gets fixed at BPS level. Now, some of the policies, the superintendent has the authority to change, and some of the policies, the school board has to actually pass a policy to change, right? And then there's school level policy. So each school then takes the state laws, the local laws, and then they put their own spin on it for their own school. So the first thing is seeing what is written, what the policy is, and enforcing them to live up. Like Martin Luther King always says, just be true to what you put down on paper. You start with, there's a problem, we need to fix it, and you just keep fighting until it happens. You gotta have the mentality where it's like, it's not over until we win, right? Because what's important to you is not important to everybody else. So you have to make it a priority to them. Coming from where I came from, okay, it's authentic, the care that I have and the love that I have for my community. So when you love someone or something, you don't get burned out loving them. When it's real, there is no burnout. It just is who you are. First, I would say find your purpose. Right? You got to know what your purpose is. My mentor always says to people, he says, if you walk out your house in the morning and you don't know where you're going, you have no idea where you're going, right? Do you go left or do you go right? Right? And then everybody thinks for a minute. Some people guess. They try to come up with some pontificated answers, all of that good stuff. And eventually he just said, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter which way you go because you don't know where you're going. And also, you won't know when you get there. You know what you would do for the rest of your life for free if you could. Everybody has that. So you got to figure that out first. So once you find out your purpose, start moving in that direction. Number 2, you don't need to have every step mapped out. The view from the third step is different than the view from the ground. So a lot of people get, like, they call it paralysis by analysis. So it's like you don't know exactly how you're going to start today and end up in the WWE, right? You're not sure what that's going to look like, right? But you can take the first step, right? You can take that. You can see that clearly. And then after you take the first step, you can see the second step. Now, you might be 50 steps down the line to get to the WWE, But the view from step 2 is different than the view from step 1. All of a sudden, when you join that gym, you find out it's like a gym league. But you didn't know that at step 1 because you wasn't at step 2. You can't see it from there. Even if you take a wrong step, you still will learn something out of it. In the military, they taught us the absolute worst thing you could do is nothing. Inaction is worse than being in a wrong action, right? Because there are other soldiers depending on you. There are things, and if you go wrong, at least you know something now, right? If you go this way and they over there shooting, you're like, yo, we can't go that way, right? They shooting over there, right? So you learn something at least, right? So you have to not be afraid to just start. Just start, right? And then the last thing, not last, but last in this case, is be the best you can. That's something that like I feel like I didn't learn. I was smart, so you know how you kind of get through life because you're smart, right? You can pass tests, you get degrees, you know what I'm saying? Go to a community meeting, say some big words, be like, oh man, he's so smart, you know? That type of stuff, right? And then opportunities follow. But what I didn't learn till later when I met with other people, when I met with other people who were at my level or above, is that being smart ain't enough. Being a good person is nowhere near enough, right? You gotta work your butt off. But if you do that, now it's a whole nother level you didn't even know existed. So if you wanna get to where you're going, just be great where you at. It may not seem like much, but people notice. People notice when you show up early, when you dependable, when you working hard, when you helpful, when you generous and kind. People notice that. They don't always say it and they ain't gonna post it on social media all the time, but they notice. And when opportunity comes, they're gonna be looking for you every single time. So that's that.